Welcome to this brief tutorial explaining the Transformative Climate Communities mapping tool. Applicants can use this tool to determine potentially eligible project areas for the upcoming round of the TCC program. We will walk through a few examples using the mapping tool, but before we do, we'd like to introduce another geospatial analysis tool for you to have as a resource, which is the one that is currently displayed on screen. So this application is a story map with GIS features on the map area here in the right, and you will be able to search using all the traditional tools provided by ArcMap. So let's start by searching for Stockton. So we'll see here all of the layers that are available here in the new mapping tool. What we'll do, and the usefulness of this tool, is that it breaks down the individual layers. So we'll click here on the first tab. So not only does this isolate the layers, but it also provides a detailed explanation and background of these layers. So this first one that we're looking at here includes clusters of parcels in unincorporated areas, as well as a layer showing the areas that are incorporated. And this will be a new feature we will be discussing a little bit further in the video. As we continue clicking along here, we see now that added to this map is the AB 1550 designated communities. Continuing on, we see CalEnviroScreen added to that. And then again, new to this round are the California Hard to Count Index, which will be useful for unincorporated communities looking for project areas for TCC, as well as the California tribal lands. Another additional feature here is that if you click on 6 here, this has a link that will send us out to the larger mapping tool, which we will do next. Now on this screen we have the Disadvantaged Communities Mapping tool for TCC, which will be the main tool one would use when trying to identify a potential TCC project area. So let's start by looking at the layers available in this round. You will see familiar layers here as used in prior rounds, both CalEnviroScreen and AB 1550. One note is that this map will feature CalEnviroScreen 3.0 from prior rounds, as well as the new CalEPA updates reflected in CalEnviroScreen 4.0, which now display the top 25% of disadvantaged communities. Another update reflecting CalEPA updates include all federally recognized tribal territories as disadvantaged communities, and these are also highlighted in this layer down here, titled Native American Reservations and Allotments. As mentioned in the earlier tool, we will also be using the California Hard to Count Index, as well as clusters of parcels of unincorporated areas and incorporated areas. Let's now go into some demonstrations of the mapping tool. But before that, let's talk about the project area requirements and eligibility for TCC. As in the first 30 rounds, at least 51% of the project area must overlap with census tracts designated as disadvantaged communities per CalEnviroScreen. For round 4, as mentioned earlier, the TCC program is expanding eligibility from the top 10% to the top 25% of disadvantaged communities. In addition, the program will adopt the final disadvantaged communities designation from CalEPA, which includes all federally recognized tribal territories, and disadvantaged community designations from both CalEnviroScreen 3.0 and 4.0. So for this first demo, we will look at a community with a project area that could potentially qualify by meeting the 51% threshold of disadvantaged community per CalEnviroScreen and AB 1550 designation of a low-income community. So let's look at Stockton. Using the example of Stockton, we see right away that the CalEnviroScreen 4.0 designation, depicted in yellow, shows a potential project area within this region that could fall both between the CalEnviroScreen and AB 1550 designations. So we'll zoom in, and the shortcut to zoom in is you hold your shift key and you drag with your mouse, and you'll be able to zoom in here. So if I were looking at a potential project area, this would be a good example and would qualify as a potential TCC project area due to at least 51% overlapping with census tracts designated as disadvantaged communities, and the remaining 49% or less of the project area overlapping with a designated low-income community per AB 1550. Okay, so now let's reset our map once more as we look for a potential TCC project area within a tribal territory. So we will look at a site within the Morongo Reservation in Riverside. And I'm going to turn off the layers here, leaving only the tribal territories active in order to get a good visualization here. And then we will zoom into the Cabazon area here. So any potential project here would have to overlap with the tribal regions depicted here in green, and either a CalEnviroScreen designated disadvantaged community or AB 1550 community. So let's activate one of the layers here. We see here that indeed this does qualify because of that overlap with either CalEnviroScreen, and let's see if perhaps this wasn't a disadvantaged community, if it was only AB 1550, would also qualify because of these designations. So again, 51% at minimum would lie within the tribal region, and 49%, the remaining of the project area, could lie either within CalEnviroScreen or AB 1550, as shown here. So this would also qualify as a potential TCC project area. Okay, so now let's take a look at a potential project area in an unincorporated community. We will reset our map here once again. And as mentioned earlier, for round 4, the TCC program has expanded eligibility to disadvantaged unincorporated communities that can establish eligibility through a few methods, including some of these that we will use with the mapping tool. So for this analysis, we will use the clusters of parcels of unincorporated areas, which I will turn on now, and then we will also use the hard to count index, which I will also turn on. So let's zoom in so we can get a better view of what these layers look like, and we will go to the Coachella Valley. Actually, let's go to the unincorporated community of Mecca in the Coachella Valley. And I will zoom out a bit here. So I'll turn off these layers just so we can have, again, a good visual representation here. Actually, we need this layer on. And here we see a cluster of parcel. This is being quantified as a community cluster that meets the density threshold of 250 parcels per square mile. So that's what we're seeing here outlined in this layer. I will also turn on the incorporated areas layer just to show the incorporated areas in comparison to those that are unincorporated. So let's go back to this area in Mecca. So assuming this would be an area that I'm looking for a potential project area, I have already identified that this is a cluster of parcels. Next, I will use the California Hard to Count Index. And the data used in the Hard to Count Index requires a granular look at neighborhood level information, and thus uses census block group data, which you'll see here. And for the Hard to Count Index census block, we are using a score of 57 as the cutoff, meaning that anything above 57 is considered hard to count, anything below that threshold is considered not hard to count. So we're looking for any of these communities that would score higher than 57. And we see here as we zoom out that this particular unincorporated community would qualify due to the threshold here being met. We will now need to identify whether the project area is designated as a disadvantaged community per CalEnviroScreen. So we'll turn on this layer. And here we see the community of Mecca also lies within a disadvantaged unincorporated community. Again, at least 51% of the project area lies within the disadvantaged unincorporated designation, and the remaining 49% or less falls in either a disadvantaged community or an AB 1550 designated community. And this does both. And I'll turn this layer off so we can see that. So this falls both in AB 1550 or CalEnviroScreen. So again, this would be a potentially qualifying project. For the last demonstration we'll do, we will look at the unincorporated community that could qualify, but misses the mark due to this threshold of the 57 or above index. So I will turn off layers here. And we will go to the community of Stockton. And there's, I'll turn on the incorporated areas layer so we can get a good, again, another visualization of what these layers are doing. I will turn off the clusters here. And you can see that this is identifying, again, the clusters that are 250 parcels per square mile. So let's zoom into this area here. And if I turn on, I'm gonna do this a little bit differently. If I turn on CalEnviroScreen now, I see that this area where this census tract, where this cluster falls, is designated as a disadvantaged community per CalEnviroScreen. What we're doing with the clusters, again, and the California Hard to Count Index is we're getting a little more granular with the data, and with the California Hard to Count Index, we're counting at the block group level, so it'll give us a more detailed definition of that community. So this is why we're using this specific criteria here. So as we turn this layer on and deactivate the CalEnviroScreen, we see that this particular area falls underneath the threshold, meaning that it's below 57 in the index score, and thus making this project area ineligible disadvantaged unincorporated community. This now ends our tutorial. We appreciate you taking time to watch this video. We hope it was helpful. Again, we encourage using both of the GIS tools as presented today in your project area analysis. Feel free to submit any questions to the TCC info email address shown here. Thank you very much and have a great day.